Rise and Slot podcast, a Warcraft podcast by the community for the community. I'm your main host, Sparty. I'm here with my co-host, Midgettes. Midgettes, how are you this fine evening?
I'm doing great. I've had a great weekend. How about you?
Pretty good overall. Exhausting, tiring as most things are. But no, it's good to be here. I don't know. It's been so tough to get the energy to stream and do anything with how busy work's been and family life and Driaz's birthday and just it's been busy. But here we are on Sunday again, episode 53, and we're talking about merging teams, guild mergers, and getting things going. Are you ready for today's
Sounds like
episode?
a great topic. I can't wait to talk about
Oh,
it.
I bet you can because this is right up your alley.
Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I do have some firsthand experience on this.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to the first part. Well, you know what? We have Sparty's dad joke of the week every single week. Somebody sent
Did you
me.
get a calendar?
No, I need a calendar still. Miranda sent me a joke earlier. People are sending me jokes as little templates here. I'm like, okay, well, these are okay, and this one I don't understand at all. But I'm going to give you guys a funny quote because this was passed along by a guildie of mine, and the quote of the week is this: People who are currently playing Warcraft have Stockholm syndrome. That's right, all of you out there. If you are having fun with Warcraft, whatever you're doing in terms of content, you must have Stockholm syndrome because Warcraft has you captive, and you clearly don't know the hate that it has. And Activision, blah blah
Oh,
blah,
so
Activision.
so I missed that I was supposed to hate the game.
Oh
Got it.
well, you should be hating Activision because they just recently bought, Blizzard, and it's clearly well defined. They're putting in the mount shops and all those things right now. Can't you tell?
Clearly
Clearly,
well defined.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We can talk
All
about that a
right.
different
Well,
time.
when it makes it, gaming made it to the, what is it called? The Book of Disorders that they make these statements on. When we make it there, we can talk about it.
Oh,
Until
for
then,
sure.
it sounds like some more you know, garbage.
Oh yeah. Well, let's move away from verbal diarrhea, and let's move on to what's new, right? So we do have the raid coming up in a couple of weeks. We are going to have some coaches corners. Yay, coaches corners! A lot of work, fun
Yay!
times. Uh, but what things are coming out or sorry are going away with the recent or the next raid release? So season two, what's going away?
Well, all of the season one achievements. So the Keystone Conqueror, Keystone Master, Cutting Edge, and of course the Ahead of the Curve for Gahoon. They're not going to be available after season one ends and season two starts. So you only have a couple of weeks to get them.
Yeah, so what today's the 6th of January. The raid comes out the 22nd. That gives people what, two more solid weeks to get Gahoon down, or get their head of the curves with Keystone Masters and Conquerors, right? So that's plenty of time, right? Hopefully people have been
It
well
depends
on their
on how
way.
much you've avoided Mythic Plus. I got mine today just by accident
Oh,
because I
you,
wasn't
you
planning
got your
on it.
Keystone Conqueror?
I got the Master,
Oh,
Keystone
awesome.
Master.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean that's par for the course. That's what they do every time a new season comes out. The other stuff is a little bit less relevant, and now new content comes out. It's a couple of weeks to get them. Get them done soon, guys. There's still lots of raids going on. I mean, in Zeros to Heroes, we have plenty of raids. People doing their head of the curves rather. And then what else? So it is the beginning of the month, which means,
The Dark Moon Fair is back.
mm-hmm.
And the
And
best thing is 8.1 brought the skill ups for the BFA professions finally. So if you've been working on your BFA
oh
professions, which
yes,
honestly this expansion they're pretty easy,
yeah.
but you do have the 5 skill ups now.
Good, because I need to finish off like blacksmithing, which has been a couple points away, and I don't want to spend all those damn resources finishing off blacksmithing for the achievement. Same with alchemy. Like it's so close. I might as well do, Dark Moon Fair stuff.
Yeah, but I think it might have ended.
What Dark Moon?
When was the first?
The,
No,
the
you will be okay. You still got this weekend. You
yeah,
should
yeah,
be okay.
we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah. So and the other thing is don't forget the rep buffs, right? The rep buffs are great for those of you working on the Paragon pets and things like that. They're huge. Like the bonuses.
Hey, I have a funny story to tell you about the Paragon emissaries.
Okay, go.
You'll appreciate this. Okay, so I've been working very hard to get the storm whatever rep so that I can get my glyphs. And so I finally got my first emissary out of it, and I didn't get the glyph, and I got a pet, and I was really mad. I didn't want the pet. I did not want the pet. I wanted the recipe.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, so
that's
I thought it was funny because Midget's the pet lover was mad that she got a
that
pet.
she got a pet. The irony is there. Well, well,
It's just fun detected, okay?
fun detected. You don't get what you want. Speaking of things we don't want, time walking. Time walking is this week, right? Or I guess the week is ending.
Well, and it's your favorite zone. I can't wait until they come
Cataclysm.
out with time walking for
World.
Deathwing because I know how much you've
Uh,
missed that
oh
instance.
man, yeah, I totally miss. What is that? What Dragon Soul? Is that right? We're talking about Dragon Soul.
Dragon Soul
Yeah.
is your
Oh
favorite.
man.
I can't wait until they do the raid for that because you get to go.
Yeah, that'll be so much fun. Well, if they force me, we'll see. We'll see. So the other thing we're talking about is just perception versus reality, and so Yithtians on the forums had a really good response to another post that was talking about shamans, and shamans have been sort of that redheaded stepchild for a while, right? I mean, for the longest time they were tank, and then they were sort of this mismatch thing, and yeah. So I mean, this post basically says he's not wanting to harp on whatever, specifically mentioning enhancements, but he's getting told enhancement doesn't bring enough cleave to be invited to a group. Um, Not mentioning of his skill, whatever, but he's pretty good at enhancement, pretty bad elemental, whatever. And so Yitzhak responds, well, right now there's an issue with perception of shamans. Number-wise, shamans can put up, pretty solid numbers, both elemental and enhancement, but the perception of shamans in 8.0 was so low, and I guess that people really hated them outside of, our Zeus god Natoro and Death Jesters. Um, but they're perfectly viable, right? But the community still perceives them as not that great, and so it's tough to manage perceptions, right? That's what everybody perceives, right? That shamans suck. In reality, they don't suck. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's something that they're aware of, and it's tough. It's tough as I guess designers to manage some of those social perceptions.
Well,
Sims are one
especially
thing.
once they get started. So, for example, if you're to pug a Mythic Plus, which we don't pug, we do all of our stuff in guild, but
Hmm.
if you were to pug anywhere at Shaman, you're probably not going to get an invite. And so, when does that perception change? And there was something interesting here too, because he said this is an issue that we've been dealing with since vanilla, because based on community discussion or feedback or even outrage and uproar, a lot of times things have changed and people don't know it. Shamans are viable. We didn't have that problem, and let's talk about perception.
Yeah,
We have a shaman. He's one of your best
oh,
players, one of your best raiders,
by far.
even in 8.0.
Yeah, I mean, even in 8.0, where people typically didn't bring shamans in, I think there was one encounter he wasn't there for progression. But I mean, even single target wise, we've always brought Natoro in because he was always a solid player and he could compete with the rest of them. So, I mean, we don't have a roster of 35 people where we're going to bring five warlocks and seven rogues or whatever. But we're going to bring the right players to the encounter, and we have, and there's zero regrets bringing Natoro.
Well, that's just it. But so some of it's perception, and we need to remember that. And, it was interesting because one of the instances, the Temple of Snakes, you have all of those things that you have to dodge. So a lot of people avoid that instance.
Hmm.
And I was in it the first time tonight because keep in mind, Midgets avoids all Mythic Plus, not just specific ones. She avoids them all. And I was helping out some team members, and they have really slowed that down. You can actually get through them now.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's great. I haven't done that instance since the changes. I've been doing shrine keys and Atala keys and whatever else. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to doing that. I mean, especially if they fixed it and it's a little bit easier to manage.
But so if I didn't tell you that though, Sparty, would you know that the changes were out there? Because I didn't know they were there. And so, are you still working on an old perception?
That's the thing, right? I mean, people continue to think what they thought in the past until somebody corrects them, and hopefully that person that corrects them has the right information, right? And is I guess is telling the truth with what they're talking about, and not just basing it off anecdotal evidence of I felt this, or I heard this, and that's not really a fact for anything. So I mean, managing perceptions is tough, and that's part of everything. I mean, it's part of guild leading and raid leading. It's managing the perceptions of what is going on behind the scenes, and it's one of those things that I've mentioned in the past, where it's sometimes it's not enough to be doing; you have to be seen to be doing. And again, it's always managing perceptions. But another topic. Let's move on to merging teams. So merging teams is always a fun one. It comes up pretty decently, pretty somewhat often in terms of questions, or it has. My big thing was, mergers don't work. Um, but I guess over the past few months, we've touched on recruiting in the past with you guys, guild merges, some of the challenges in the current culture of guilds, a lot of teams calling it quits for a number of different reasons, some of them being BFA related, some of them being, just burnout, or, they're getting old, or the game's getting old, all that stuff, right? Um, is BFA the only expansion where this has been necessary? Looking at mergers potentially. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, from my experience, it's not. This is, I mean, I've done four rebuilds of Death Jesters in the last 14 years. There was a couple times where mergers were looked at or thought about, even with high progression, like Death Jesters merging with another guild. Um, but I mean, mergers are not necessarily a great idea most of the time, and sometimes they do work. But let's talk about recruiting. So recruiting. So the reason you get to mergers, right, is because of recruiting in general. And recruiting has always been pretty cyclical in nature. You have a new patch. So we have a new patch coming out. Guess what? A lot of people are going to come out of the woodworks, and a lot of returning players will, come back. Just like at the new expansion, right? You get a ton of players, and then it sort of tapers off. People get bored, whatever. Um, this is sort of the time you should be preparing. You should be bolstering your ranks and in preparation for some of the leaner times of the player base, right? I mean, you get a lot of players, and then what? It sort of tapers off. Well, it's your responsibility as a raid leader, as a recruiter, as an officer, to ensure you have the numbers to last until the next big content patch, right? Because what happens when guilds stop raiding? Well, they die, right? Most raiding guilds die. There's not enough getting things done to keep things going. So the pool of raiders really decreases when you have a specific class that is needed for a specific encounter. For instance, Zool mass dispels, rogues were there for Zool, warlocks for Gahoon. Those are some of your key ones. Or when you have some of I guess this is a good term you coined, these tourist raiders, where they have 100% attendance for the first couple weeks, and then they get really busy and take time off. And a lot of players are like that, and that's totally fine. We get life is busy and real life happens, but these are sort of the touristy raiders that you can count on for a little bit, and then they sort of die off, and then they come back again. And you're stuck with, okay, well, what do I do? Like, you're gonna come back for a few weeks, we're gonna down content, and then for farm, you're never back because you don't need anything from farm. You got all your kills, right? And that's just, it's a different attitude and mentality to have. At the same time, we do have things like major holidays coming up, content droughts, people are disenchanted with the current raid or expansion, and those always contribute to attrition as well. So, as guild leaders, as raid leaders, as all of that, it's our job to combat that natural attrition and look for players that are looking for more progression, right? And the onus is on us to do all those things, right? You have players that are looking for progression. At the same time, you're gonna have players that don't fit in the culture of the team or have different views of how a guild or team should run. Sparty back in my guild. Well, that's great. Uh, yeah, and
Well,
so go ahead.
but is it worse in BFA?
Is it no?
Or is this just sort of the same thing that happened last year?
This is every single expansion. I'll tell you right now. Like again, 14 years of doing this. This is every single expansion this happens, and it's not that much more than normal. Like if I were to give it a percentage, how much more is it than normal? 10% more. I mean, that's basically saying I've lost one more raider to not liking the game compared to in the past, right? Like when we had Legion and people didn't like Azurite power, sorry, artifact power, I think I lost two raiders, right? Just didn't like the way it was going. It was two hunters, and that was it. Cool. How many have I lost this expansion so far? I mean, it's been tier one, but one. I'm pretty sure I've lost just one player due to
Right.
AP burnout. So it's par for the course, right? Um, yeah, it's not really indifferent from anything else in the past.
Well, and I think that, again, we talk about perception.
Hmm.
I think, too, within this, there has been some additional feedback from, sort of a very vocal. I hate BFA crowd, we'll call them, as well as right into the holidays, which get really quiet. And, there's a lot of things, people are doing a lot of things in the month of December.
Yep.
And so you have a lot more absences and things like that. So when you have all of that combined, and maybe you're struggling yourself as a raid leader of being self motivated
Mm-hmm.
or as a guild leader, I think it seems worse. And especially if you're listening to all the people out, negative Nancy's, so to speak.
Yes. Well.
So I think we're dealing with some perception, some reality, and some that it just happened just like it did last time.
Yeah.
You just didn't notice.
That's true. I mean, again, it happened last time, and we might have had more things to satiate our appetites. Whether it was Mage Tower, or where it was brand new Mythic Pluses, and people were really loving them, or people were doing their order hauls, or like there was a lot of different types of content. But at the same time, you have the same outspoken critics out there, verbal diarrheaing all over, all over Twitter and YouTube, and again, negativity sells. Unfortunately to say, like that's what it is. Um, and unfortunately, positivity doesn't sell as much and doesn't give you those YouTube clicks and subs. And it's tough to manage those perceptions when you have fact versus, well, sort of this is somebody's perception and what they're looking to do. And if you try to defend it, well, you're a white knight. But anyway, so back to to this topic, recruiting. I mean, it's again cyclical. You didn't notice it because there were other things going on, and people were complaining about content, and you know now we're dealing with the same kind of things, right? We're dealing with lack of players, and people are blaming different things. Okay, well, how do we deal with those things, right? So there's always going to be issues with patches, with the game, with design, whatever, right? There's never going to be a time where everybody is absolutely happy.
Well,
So
and sometimes it's just because you don't like your raid leader or the
yeah,
person leading your team.
yeah, and that's fair too, right? Sometimes they just don't like Sparty. Okay, cool. Well, enjoy a non-Sparty guild. Like that's fine too, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And you need to keep things going, right? Like you as raid leads and guild leads, you have to keep the momentum going and keep your team strong. Because if you have this huge, push at the start and then it tapers off, and again, you stop raiding, you take a break, it's less and less raiding. And, unfortunately, I've seen that happen to a couple of the Zeros to Heroes teams where they're like, okay, well, let's take a little bit of break from raiding. I'm a little burnt out. I want to do this. And then what happens? Well, team is done. Nobody is there to take the reins. People are bored, and that negative energy just feeds off each other. So we've had to close down one of the Zeros to Heroes teams because there just wasn't enough interest, right? There wasn't enough getting things going. There wasn't enough engagement, and sometimes you have to make those tough choices. We talked about we had your weekend team, right? So Midget started a weekend team. How long ago? Months ago? A few months ago at least, right?
Right before BFA started.
Oh, so yeah, so right before BFA started, the weekend team started, and basically this. So we have a Friday Saturday team, which is Team Ramrod on Zeros to Heroes, and then we have the weekend team. And with the weekend team, there was a ton of people that we just couldn't fit. Like there was simply too much interest in a later Friday Saturday raid team. So okay, we said we're gonna break it up between two teams and see what happens and go through all of that. And typically, guild mergers or team mergers, they don't work, right? Mergers don't work because there's different cultures and different leadership styles, and most of the time, guild murders don't work. Sorry, guild mergers don't work. Guild murders do.
Oh, yeah, well, they can be guild murderers.
Yeah, the guild murders. Assimilations do, meaning if there's 5 or 6 players, and Death Justice have done this in the past, where if there's 5 or 6 players where you bring in and you assimilate them and they assimilate well into your culture, um, you split up so there's no kind of clique activities going on. You borg the hell out of them, right? You assimilate them, then it often does work, right? But if there's like, okay, well, we're gonna merge, we're gonna have a leader from this guild, leader from this guild, that often doesn't work. The flip side is, with a guild like Zeros to Heroes, we have lots of teams, but in Zeros to Heroes we have one consistent culture, right? Like one really good culture. So we've encountered this situation in Zeros to Heroes where, okay, we're getting some touristy raiders and fewer raiders able to play. So we've now made the decision to combine two of the teams on the weekend to under the umbrella of the weekend team, right? So it's now the weekend team. It was yin and yang. It's now the weekend team. And so why don't you talk to us about, this is your team, Midgets. Tell us about what prompted that decision. What sort of got it going, and what was the thought process behind? Okay, well, it's time to merge a team.
Well, it's been something that, because when we brought the two teams in, the biggest concern was trying to have everybody have a home. And the biggest challenge, of course, was our tanks and healers. And that's, just so you know, still a challenge. But for as time went on, and each team within the culture of Zeros to Heroes, each team has a subculture. So the weekend team was a little different because it was all under the umbrella of the weekend team, which it meant it still had the same leadership. I was involved in almost all of the leadership
Hmm.
decisions. So that was one of the reasons. I had sort of I fought for it for a long time because we had some really strong players and we could have conceivably made two very strong teams. But before we started heading into the holidays, we had I'll call them the tourist raiders, those that came for the BFX expansion. We had a lot of those. And then we had a few that didn't necessarily want to develop the culture or the foundation of the team. They were more interested in strictly progression, and we're a community guild, so we bring new people in and we help gear them up and teach them the encounters, and so it slows us down a little bit. Being a new team, it slowed us down even more because we were working on the foundation, which means we might have done normals more than we needed to, or heroics, so that people got used to playing with each other.
For
And
sure.
as the months progressed, we had, we were starting to struggle. We had a lot of nights where either one or the other teams didn't have enough to make 20 for a mythic raid. Now, keeping in mind that currently the culture for recruiting has been challenging, and you can attest to that. I can attest to that both for the weekend team, for Zeros to Heroes, and for Death Jesters. So we made it through the holidays, and within that, we combined the runs a lot of times so that we could keep raiding. I can tell you the one thing we never did was not raid. We would do heroics again, we would do achievement runs, but we always raided on our raid nights.
So you never called a raid due to lack of numbers. You
The
found
only
a way
we
to make it
we
work,
found
make
a way to
something work.
raid. We
Okay.
begged, borrowed, and stealed. We'd get people to fill in. We would do a mythic, we would do achievement runs. The only night we called it, and even then, some of the teams still went on and worked on achievement runs. We called it the weekend of Christmas.
Well, I think,
Um,
out of fairness, most guilds did. I mean, it was like Christmas ended on a Tuesday or something, I think, right? Or
yeah, so the weekend before Christmas, we called it. And even then, a lot of the team went on and worked on achievement runs. So as we came into the first of the year and we were still combining the groups and we were still sitting right there at that really tough 2 of 8 mythic threshold where we really wanted to get past it, um, we had another night where we needed to combine to actually make a mythic raid and had
hmm
them going in. So we made the decision, good or bad, because I expect that in January 22nd that we would have a lot of people come back. Our tourist raiders would all of a sudden have their computers fixed, their jobs sorted out, and they would be back for the new
what a
content.
coincidence! That's just when the
What
raid
a
comes out.
coincidence! How amazing that is. And so I decided, rather than have those spots and then be in the same place we were a couple of months later when they saw the content and were done, to go ahead and take the and work with the people who had been here and trying to raid every week and make it one team. Of course, the night we decided to do that, we have more people than we ever had. We had 30 people, 38 people show up.
Wow.
That is still not enough to make two mythic raid
Yeah, this is
teams.
true.
And so the team took it with great. They were awesome. And we did some swap outs and we had, everybody was really good and understanding. And I mean, we had some problems. I'm not going to say it was perfect. But the best thing is we took that boss that we'd been working on, Zach Voss, and that first night we got it to 7%. And then the very next night, in 4 pulls, we killed it. So we went from 2 of 8 to 3 of 8. And
That's
we've
awesome.
got some work to do, but we made forward progress. And that solidified that making being a good decision.
Yeah, and so a couple things philosophically with the weekend team. So with zeros to heroes, we want to make sure people have a home and they're enjoying a place to raid, and it's not just a raiding guild for the raiding tourists. When we thought about these teams, because there were so many people, there were some thoughts of, okay, well, why don't we just put all the best players on one team and the shitty players on the other team and see what happens, because we could do that. That wasn't really the intention. The goal is to again develop that culture, build those foundations, and we want people that are bought into the system, right? We wanted people that are bought into that philosophy and those fundamentals. And it had certainly had its challenges and learnings and developing new leaders and teams. We've gone through a number of different leaders and healers and tanks to find people what works, and those are those key roles where it's difficult to find people to fill those roles that can be reliable and again bought into the entire system. So now you're going into a raid where, okay, the teams are merged. You've got 38 players that show up, right? Most raiding teams have, let's say, 27, so you've got 10 more. So what's the plan now? I mean, I guess the worry is that when you merge these teams, some people are left on the outside. How do you reconcile that? And let's say the 10 players that aren't there. What was the attitude like? And what's the plan going forward for dealing with this large roster now?
Well, so several things. Number one, I believe that the next few weeks there's going to be some fallout. I expect that. The attendance boss was true to form. The very next night we had 30.
Oh,
Now,
so
were some of those people potentially because they were disenchanted with it potentially, and there's some people who had a lot of challenges with the attendance boss. There's been a few that we've already let go.
hmm and so
Now,
when you let go, what does that mean? Like, are they kicked out of the guild? How
no,
do
we
you?
just said, that. So one said we can only make one night of the 2 nights.
Okay,
Okay, well, going forward, we need you both nights. So maybe another team would be better for you.
for sure.
And then we had one that had some real life challenges, and we said, hey, this is a good time for you to focus on your real life challenges, but we're going to head another direction. Um, this is, and then we're going to have, I think we'll have some attrition. I think we'll have some people who don't necessarily like the more of the two teams, the yin and yang. One was much more laid back and had a lot more, you know, they were a lot more, and we were more focused on yin.
hmm
And the raid leader is coming from yin. So we tend to be a little bit more focused. We're looking at some, they may not like that new environment.
hmm
So I think we'll have some fallout there.
Yeah,
But what it does is so I think we'll have, so for the next few weeks, we're going to sort of watch it. We're talking to the people who aren't showing up. The people, I sat in Discord all day after we did the merger the next day, so that people could join me and talk to me. I made sure that all of the players could come talk to me.
good.
And it's been, most of the feedback has been very positive. The biggest challenge is people are worried, especially going into a new raid, about being benched on a heroic run. But we'll make it work.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, and I guess there's two trains of thought with that, right? Where, okay, you've got a roster now of, let's say, 35-ish people after that. Going to heroic, there's only room for 30. Well, what do you do as a player, right? So let's from a leader perspective, we merge your teams, we want to make sure it works. As a player, well, what do I do? Well, hopefully it lights a fire under your ass because you need to play better. And what does that mean? Well, it means know the encounters and mash your buttons and talk to people for advice and that kind of stuff. And ultimately, it should make the team stronger. But it sounds like you're going to have some fair rotations going in, and people are going to see different bosses and that kind of stuff.
well, and not only that, too, so there's a couple of areas.
hmm
One, it's going to strengthen our off specs, especially because we still have a couple of more tanks than we probably really
Right.
need. And then potentially, we're still massaging this, and we're going to see where everybody's working. We've had some new people that we brought in, especially, so we now have like 11 healers. Um,
Wow.
and so we're going to see how it goes in the next few weeks, and how we adjust that, and then we'll talk to individual players and see if maybe, because my healer core and is for the most part, has the best attendance of the whole raid
That's good. It's important.
of both teams. So what may happen though is we have some other teams that could use a healer, and we're not going to need 5 priests or 18 shamans or any of those things, and so maybe we can do some of that. But we're going to talk to the players. We're going to be talking to the players the entire time, and so we're going to see what happens in the next few weeks. We've made use of the waitlist add-on
Hmm.
so that we can do swaps. We're going to get better at swaps. We haven't had to really practice that
With a
because we've
short
been
roster,
struggling
yeah.
to fill raid.
Yep.
What it really enables, at least from a leadership perspective, it enables you to enforce some of the things you'd like to see. So our biggest challenge has been the attendance boss.
Hmm.
So a lot of people who have been really challenged by the attendance boss, and we're going to differentiate between being challenged because we had so our tank, for example, he missed a raid because he had to have surgery.
Hmm.
That's going to not be counted against him.
Yeah, I mean, those are those real life things that
Real life
happen,
is
right?
going to happen.
Yeah,
But some of our more attendance challenged folks won't, if we had to, we have to choose for a spot and somebody's coming in, it's going to be somebody who's been there.
for sure. I mean, you want that, I guess, that longevity and that loyalty and that consistency from players because you want to know what to expect, right? And I guess that's true for Death Jesters as well, where we want players that are consistent, and whether it be performance-wise, you don't want those glass cannons that are gonna do really well one pull and then die for 10 pulls straight. So yeah, consistency is super important going into a raid team and a raid tier, which is great. So you've talked about the open communication, and that's really important. But what else? So moving on from merging, right? You want to really get things going, right? You want to put the pedal to the metal and get those teams bonding, right? You want the new players bonding with the other team. So Yin and Yang are now merged together. What's the plan for getting these guys engaged? So yeah, ratings there, but what else? How do you, I guess,
Well,
really bridge that gap?
we had a farm party tonight. Now, keep
A
in
farm
mind,
party,
these teams, yeah, we had a farm party. They had a great time.
like in
Zero Sierras even tweeted it. They were out farming. They found that rare spawn of anchorweed.
oh,
For two
farming.
hours,
I thought
they
like
were
suddenly
farming.
we're going to miss a Pandera and going back to the farm, and everyone's doing a big party.
No, we were getting mats we were getting materials and supplies for our raid mats,
Ah, well that's pretty good.
and we're doing an achievement run next weekend.
Good.
And then they put together a roster, so to speak, of Mythic Plus so that we can make sure we were getting our tins.
Very cool. And
And we
so,
were talking about doing dungeon achievement runs tonight before I got on the podcast.
oh, I gotta do those too. Yeah, dungeon achievement raids. I gotta finish off my ones from Legion too. I feel like such a dirty
And we
casual
even
now.
we even increased somebody's engineering because we had another herbalism mount bot because they needed it to keep up with the rest of the team.
That's awesome. Cool. So you're going to the situation where you've got this small team to a large team. As a player, what can I do, right? I mean, am I going to be sneaking for the bosses? What should be my modus operandi for getting a raid spot? What can I do to ensure that okay, I'm not considered one of those raid tourists, and I get some raid time in heroic or mythic. What would you
Well, I
want
can
from
tell you
me?
one thing: we made sure that everybody that was there. Now, keep in mind, a few people that got set for one boss just left,
Ah,
so they missed out on the later in the evening when everybody else got rotated in for progression. So everybody got to see that boss. The only person who sat the whole weekend was me, and that was by design. Otherwise, I'd have been in there too. And what will happen with that? So, how to guarantee your spot? Be involved. If you have concerns, come to your leaders. Um, the doors are open so that you can share those concerns. Most everybody that I have talked to, and I'm not saying everybody thinks this is wonderful, and there are people worried about their spots. But the best thing you can do is you're going to. So, one guy, we've got like a bazillion hunters. He says, well, I've been working on my warlock. We have zero warlocks.
zero warlocks in a team of 35. I guess warlocks are
Zero
rare one.
warlocks. We don't have a DK. Now I have to keep in mind it was a transitional decision, and we had just recruited another demon hunter for the other team,
Hmm.
and his first night we merge, so he was sort of like, "Hello,
Yeah.
what are you guys doing?" And it was a bit unsettling for him.
Hmm.
But he actually also has a DK. We don't have a DK, and he's going to swap tunes, and he's been around. And our new guy, we had a couple of new players. He said, "Am I going to get time?" Yes. Now I can't guarantee you're going to be on every boss, but Sparty, you guys can't guarantee that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Listen, I've been playing vanilla for 14 years. I played a Holy Paladin. I have a damn corrupted Ashbringer. I want to bean for every single boss. What do you mean I can't bean for every single boss? I want to be.
Well, what one hand and how does that go?
Yeah, I guess realistically, and you're talking about, people, wanting to see some time. Part of it is like being on a sports team. If you guys ever been on a sports team, um, sometimes you're not in all the time, right? Whether you're playing hockey or basketball, I guess baseball doesn't take much energy, and so you're always out there. But if you're playing a real sport, right, that requires some running around, and let's say football, football's really big right now. People sit on the bench for what, like a couple hours, and they eventually go out there to try to kick a field goal, and they miss, right? So. Everyone sees a bit of bench time, right? From officers to raid leaders to midgets, which is running these teams. Everyone sees some bench time, and I guess you need to see yours, right? I mean,
Well, right now the raid leader will not see any bench time,
ah,
and that has to do with the continuity of the team.
for sure.
He will be in for every raid in his spot, leading the raid until everybody adjusts to the different raid leader style.
Yeah, and I think that's really
Once
important.
that happens, then of course there'll be some more flexibility.
Yep, and I think that's really important because even in Death Years, we've done the same thing, right? Where we had seven scan who have now taken over the raid leading responsibilities of the team, and my mandate to them was, don't sit yourselves. You need to get in there because you guys need to run the show. And there's been times where Scan sat himself or whatever, where he was away, and we had to make do. But the goal right now, or when we were transitioning into a different leadership system, was to get those guys as much raid team so they could really focus and learn those things. And then yeah, I mean outside of those key roles, so I mean if your raid lead has like a tank role for instance, yeah, they're going to be in pretty much all the time. The downside is, if that tank is out, well, you're missing a tank and I guess a raid lead as well, right?
Well, the good news is one of the things the tanks are working on, and so our particular raid lead also has a DK and a mage who's ready to also be in there raid leading and not necessarily tank, so that
Hmm.
the other tanks can get in there. And so it will encourage the off specs on that.
That's good.
And you're right. So we've still got growing pains, and we're going to still have challenges. But the big thing has been it has been well received overall from the team. I can't tell you what's been happening behind the scenes because, of course, back in those back corners where people talk behind your back and don't talk to you, things aren't always this great. But the people who have been talking to me and coming to me, and the raids morale is 100% better than it was a week ago.
Well, especially after a kill, when you have a kill coming out of a major decision like that, that is a huge morale booster, and that really solidifies that it was the right move that time to do it, right? Would this have been the right decision to merge the teams at the start? If we had 40 people at the start, I don't think so. I think it was a good way to I guess, weed out the players that may not have the grit to last, right? People that philosophically would not have fit in, right? I think we would have had the same issues where we would have been going through a lot of raiders and a lot of turnover, and people would have seen much less raiding with two full teams of 25. So if you had a 50-person raid team, you'd see a lot of people sitting out and unhappy and then moving on, right? So I think at this point, this was absolutely the right call to make. And yeah, you're merging teams, you're not merging guilds. That's the big differentiation, right? It's the same culture, it's the same kind of attitudes. Yeah, one team had a little bit more, organization or finesse, but that's a really easy thing to overcome, right? Going from one team to another, and now, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and two, so there was a couple of other things. There's been a little bit of power control.
Ah.
Some of they were more raid leaders on the other team and they're not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been some challenges. So like I said, it's not all, not all unicorns and butterflies and rainbows, and
Yeah, there's
but
growing pains
those
and there's learning experiences
those
for
are
sure.
growing pains.
Yeah,
The biggest thing is for me is I want to make sure that we're rating successfully and the team morale is good. And I want those people to be able to rate. So the people that are concerned about their spots, what can you do? You ask that. Well, they can be involved. They can come to the farming parties. They can help in the strats. You don't. You, some of it is obviously, and especially with a team like Death Jesters, we're a community guild, so we want people who perform well, but that's not the only thing. We want people that are, at least my teams, want people who are also a part of the community.
for sure.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I think those are, the important qualities that we have in Zeros to Heroes, right? Like, as a community between our two sister guilds, philosophically, it's the same thing, right? It's be excellent to each other. We were pretty welcoming of people, and we share players between the guilds, and now we're looking to do a heroic next Thursday between both guilds, and those are the kinds of things we want to be doing, and we are, which is great.
Well,
So
and I think too, though, because other teams are challenged. So let's sort of talk about that, because I know some of the other teams are really having challenges with people being involved.
hmm
I had a raider come to me from another team and say, I'm having problems finding people to do Mythic Plus, and there's no getting to know people because nobody's really on. I love raiding with them, but that's the only time I see them.
we
What's the
have
flip
500
side
plus
to that?
people,
Because I
and they
think
can't find a group.
if we had that kind of culture when we merged this team, I don't think it would have been the same, because my teams have been very good at doing the farming parties and the other runs, and and running Mythic Plus and going to the Sunday runs and all of the different things that we do in the guild.
Yeah, so going back to a few podcasts ago, when we were just talking about all these little things, and these normals and these little dungeons, even stuff that she's talking about now, like these little farming raids and pet battle tournaments and all that other, like, it sounds like floofy bullshit, right? It all sounds like, okay, we're doing a bunch of little casual little things, but it sounds like the foundation has been built because of those little floofy bullshit things, and it's been the right path, right? Like, coming for listen for, as a raider, right? It sounds okay. We're doing those kind of little things, but the foundation is there because you've built the culture you want, right? Where people do feel included. I hope. Doing dungeons and doing this kind of stuff and playing on Discord and joking around and posting memes and all that stuff. So because of all those little activities that, yeah, may have taken a step back in terms of progression, because like you said, you might have done a couple normals more than you needed, or it was a new team, but it sounds like the foundation has been built now for longevity of this team.
Well, and what's really cute about and I was telling him this when we were talking about it, you're going to remember who you killed the boss with more so than you will the boss. And so every week we all have to do the same chores. Okay. We have to do our Mythic 10 or better. We have to do islands.
hmm
We have to go ahead and do our emissaries, invasions if we're doing those, and then whatever the weekly is, right? And if you make it a fun thing, so I can tell you, you would have face palmed. But Aelid and Amy and I tend to do islands together, and we like to do the mythic ones. And so here we are arguing, and Aelid's picking on Amy because Amy's standing and stuff, and Aelid's trying to keep midgets from going the other direction because there's a big chest over there that she wants to get,
It's like the
and then
blind
he's
leading the blind.
pulling all of the things and almost dying, and that's what we remember of the islands.
That sounds like a blind leading the blind kind of shit show. I definitely don't want to be
You
in that
would hate it,
island.
but we had a blast, and we do it every week.
That is that's a different kind of fun, that I may not enjoy doing. But
No, you
that's
leave me to die because I've quested with you. You just head off and leave me to die.
oh man, that's right. You can't stop a gnome on a treasure hunt. That's exactly right. Okay, so I mean that's great. We see the same thing in Death Jesters though. Like we say, okay, who needs islands, right? Like who else needs help with islands? You see Triage and APOC, like, oh yeah, I'll do islands. I love islands. I love AP. Like some of the highest people in the world now with AP. Um, doing
Yeah,
their
isn't aren't they at like 41?
yeah, they're like at 41 like which is crazy. Like it's awesome. But clearly they are loving this, and I mean they must be one of those 10 people in Iron Forge because they're absolutely loving this game.
Well, maybe
Um,
they have Stockholm syndrome.
yeah, maybe they do have Stockholm syndrome, and Warcraft is keeping them, you know, kidnapped. So moving on to we've merged the teams. Well, what do you do going forward, right? So you've talked a little about it in terms of talking to people, but what are some of the challenges you've had and you foresee going into it, going into let's say week 2, week 3, week 4 of of this new merged team?
I think the next few weeks we'll just kind of see who's going to be on board with the changes. I also think that so our biggest challenge right now is we have multiple six hunters, you know,
Hmm.
11 healers, 5 tanks, 4 tanks. So there'll be some of that natural attrition. So we're going to sort of let it just play it by ear, continue to work on strats. We're preparing for the new raid.
Hmm.
I think our biggest challenge is actually going to come on 122 when all of these people come back and they don't have a spot.
Okay, so let's say I'm one of those people. I'm one of those raid tourists, or I am one of those 6 hunters, or 5 tanks, or 11 healers that you currently have. What do I do? Like, do I just go find a new guild? Like, what is my plan here? Like, what does Zeros to Heroes want to do with me? If
Well,
I'm not fitting in on let's say the core mythic group, right? Like, I'm pretty new to the game. I'm not doing too well. I'm learning. I'm having fun, but ultimately I want to see more raid time. So what are my options?
so what's going to happen is within so we're doing several things. All of the leaders have been tasked with touching or talking to the individual raiders, and I've hit a good portion of the team. I've stayed after raid to talk to them. And then from there, we have our attendance challenged people, so they like to not show up. So we reach out to them and see what they have to say. And then based on those individual discussions, depending on the fit, we do have what we call a channel where people can post looking interest for other raid teams. Now, my biggest concern with this, Sparty, though, is for the guild as a whole and the raid teams as a whole, is a lot of the people that the weekend team won't likely be maintaining are the ones that have been challenging. Most of our challenges are attendance bosses, but there's a few others. And so we're going to we're going to run into some problems because I don't want to send them to another team that's been struggling filling their raid knowing that they have a 35% attendance ratio.
Aha. Okay.
So what do we do there?
So you have players that may be more challenging, and sometimes there's personality conflicts, and sometimes sometimes people aren't easy to work with, and other times they have 35% attendance, and let's say they're not a good fit for the weekend team, right? Midges' team. Um, we don't necessarily want to send them to a team that is also struggling because now they're dealing with a quote unquote like a problem child or an attendance person. Well, what are the options? Should they find a new guild? There's lots of things that we can do, right? We can work with the people to to find the right team. We've always looked at building new teams as well, right? If there's interest in a normal heroic team or different days or an early morning team, people have brought up these ideas in the past. I'm like, okay, well, if you want to start a new raid team, cool, go find the numbers. Like, you want to I've had this a couple of times where people have come to me and said, I want to start you know a morning raid team because that's what I have. I work like second shift or whatever, and I want to work or I want to play 9 a.m. in the morning. Can we do it? I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, let's find a way to make it happen. Go find 10 people that are willing to commit to that, and then we'll start the process, right? Otherwise, it's not worth it. So with these players, yeah, I mean, philosophically, we want to make sure these guys have a home. Bottom line, you don't want
We
to
want
send
them to be
somebody on the
happy and
street.
have a home. Yeah.
Exactly. You don't want to send people out on the streets because that's not what we do in this community, right? We don't want to say, hey, yeah, we don't have a spot for you. Sorry, you suck. Go find a Hello Kitty Island Adventure Guild. No, we want to ensure that people are happy, and that's where part of the work is, right? Like part of the work in these leadership positions, it's a friggin' job. Like it's so much to manage people and managing perceptions and expectations and all that other stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's a thankless job, but we're doing it because we enjoy seeing people happy, right? So ultimately, we don't want to send people out. We don't want to kick people off the raid teams. We want to find the right fit for this person, right, as well as the rest of the team, right? So the team's health is important as well as ensuring this person does find a home and does find a place to raid with. And sometimes it's going to be showing up on on the weekend team to fill raids whenever possible, right? Like, hey, I'll be around if you guys need me. Still want to stick around? That's fine. Okay, cool. So whenever we need spots for heroic or we're doing normals or whatever, yeah, absolutely come along. And there's plenty of impromptu raids that are done. Whether it be our coffee raids or now our Thursday heroic raid or whatever it is. There's be more and more of those for sure.
Well, and not only that, you may find that they enjoy a different environment because each team has a slightly different culture. So they may not have some of the same attendance challenges because they may like the team better.
For sure.
Um, and so it's going to be an individual conversation. I can't bulk tell you that these people are just going to all go. We're going to work. So this is for the people that are on the team. So we're going to work with the people on this team to make it as best as we can for as many people as we can. And we're not going to make everybody happy. And some people are going to make other choices, but we're going to let the players make those choices.
And I think that
Um,
that's really important to have that commitment of working with people and not giving up, and you find a way. And I guess to close out our podcast, I think with a raid team, one of the worst things you can ever do is is stop raiding. Right? Is with a raiding team is not raid, and I think it's a huge recipe for a disaster. When oftentimes that's the reason a team or a guild falls apart. They finish the raid and that's it. Then they stop playing, and a lot of those the interminglings and the bonding that just doesn't happen. Because a lot of it happens in a raid already. But if you're not engaged with your teams doing stuff, whether it's all that floofy bullshit that Midges talks about, but clearly successful, um, those teams don't last. So it's up to the leadership to continually be growing that team, encouraging more and more, and participating in various outside activities to keep the players engaged and involved. And doesn't necessarily need to be in Warcraft. It can be in other games as well, right? Whether it's Overwatch or people are playing Heroes or League of Legends together or whatever it is. So give these guys a reason to play together. And if you aren't around for a Mythic Plus Fun Night or other activity, why would you raider? So as a raid leader, like if you're not around for those nights, why should you raiders? Or you need to sort of set that tone and lead by example. And yeah, many raiders they definitely enjoy raiding the most, and that's what they log on for. Totally fine. Um, However, people really enjoy raiding the most with their friends, and if you really want to build longevity and loyalty in your teams, it's okay. Let's make friends, right? I mean, you'll always remember a boss kill, but it's more likely you'll remember, the process with which you killed the boss, right? And the people you killed it with, right? The struggles and the wipes and all those fun things, and Sparty running into the Argus group and completely wiping us, and they're never gonna let me live that down because that was a hilarious moment. Um, but again, as raid leaders and as officers, engage your players, keep them motivated, and ultimately motivate yourself. Find something that'll motivate you, right? I looked at my simple armory the other day, and I'm like, oh, I don't have any of these pets, and so I bought a couple of pets off the store. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go do some pet collecting in some of these old things and get some mounts because I've suddenly got remotivated to do those things. Um, and so ultimately make it a place that your players and your team want to log on, not just to raid, but to hang out with friends. That is important. Use the time between events or between raids to do events, whether it be the farm stuff or PvP stuff, or, we're doing a Mafia game and we're doing stuff on our forums of 30 Days of Warcraft, of, what's your favorite villain or favorite raid or favorite zone. Stuff to keep your team engaged, right? Keep them talking to each other, whatever, sharing stuff about their real life. And set your team up for the next raid. Start working on strategies for new bosses, which we have. We've got lots of videos ready to go. Meet with your team members, and this is where the crux is, guys. It's talking to your players. It takes a lot of time to talk to players, but that is the most successful thing you can do is talk to them, see what their thoughts are for the previous tier, find out what their new tier goals they have. We did a debrief with Death Jesters for every single one of our players. It was a 15 to 30 minute debrief, but we wanted to see exactly where they stood. We want to get a good pulse check, and you know it's important to have those conversations with your players to engage them, involve them in the raid team and in the guild. as that active involvement will help the team, the player, and the guild through the rough patches of any expansion. And of course, when those players are playing, you're going to have more than 10 players in Ironforge. In other words, never stop moving forward and never give up. With that, guys, thank you for listening. Have a good night, listen to each other, and as always, live your life heroically. Have a great night.